Admiral Colvan leaned back in his massive command chair, the crystalline surface of the bridge reflecting the cold light of distant stars. His forearms moved with practiced precision as he dismissed the holographic reports floating before him. The bridge crew of the Imperial flagship Dominion's Edge watched nervously as their commander's mood darkened. "These Earth reports are getting ridiculous," Colvan growled, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Dr. Zenth, explain to me how a single primitive world could possibly threaten the greatest military force in galactic history." Dr. Zenth, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward carefully. His tentacles quivered as he accessed the data files. "Sir, the advanced scouts documented something extraordinary. This species they call humans has survived not one, but multiple planetary extinction events. Ice ages that lasted millennia, asteroid impacts that blocked out their sun for years, volcanic eruptions that poisoned their atmosphere. Impossible." Commander Yextar interrupted from his position at the tactical station. "No species survives that level of environmental catastrophe. Our biological models prove it." Zenth's skin changed color, a sign of distress among his kind. "That's exactly what makes them dangerous, Commander. They don't follow our models. The scouts reported that humans actually joke about being the cockroaches of the galaxy because nothing can kill them completely." Admiral Colvan stood up, his towering frame casting shadows across the bridge. "You're telling me that an entire invasion fleet should fear a species that hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel, a civilization that still uses chemical rockets and metal projectiles?" "Sir, it's not about their technology level," Zenth pleaded. "It's about their psychology. They've weaponized their own planet's hostile environment. Their military strategies are based on surviving impossible odds. They don't surrender, they don't negotiate when cornered, and they view every setback as just another challenge to overcome." The Admiral walked to the main viewport, staring at the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. The blue-green planet looked peaceful, almost inviting. "Look at it, Doctor. One small world with primitive defenses. We have 2,000 of the most advanced warships ever built. Each one could glass an entire continent." "That's what worries me most," Zenth whispered. "They know they're outgunned. They know they can't win a conventional war, but humans don't fight conventional wars." Meanwhile, 27 light-years away, Lieutenant Jin sat hunched over his monitoring station in the Seoul Defense Command bunker. The underground facility hummed with activity as technicians worked around the clock, maintaining Earth's deep space sensor network. Jin had been staring at the same readings for 3 hours, hoping there was some kind of equipment malfunction. "Colonel Minho," he called out, his voice tight with tension. "I need you to see this." Colonel Minho walked over, coffee in hand, expecting another routine sensor ghost. She was a veteran of Earth's unified military, someone who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. As her eyes scanned the data, her face went pale. "Those are confirmed contacts?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. 2,000 large vessels, moving in perfect formation. They entered our detection range 6 hours ago, and they're not responding to any communication attempts. Their trajectory puts them in Earth orbit in 72 hours. Minho set down her coffee with shaking hands. "Get me President Kim on the secure line. Red priority." As Jin frantically worked his communications panel, Minho stared at the tactical display. Humanity had always known this day might come. Every science fiction movie, every military simulation, every late-night discussion among world leaders had prepared them for the possibility of hostile first contact. But seeing it actually happen felt surreal. "President Kim on line 1. Secure. Channel," Jin reported. "Madam President," Minho began, "the Watchtower protocol has been activated. We have confirmed hostile contact with unknown vessels approaching Earth." President Kim's voice came through crystal clear despite the encryption. "How long do we have?" 72 hours to impact, assuming they maintain current speed." "Understood. I'm activating the Planetary Defense Directive immediately. All military commanders are to report to their crisis stations within the hour." In a hidden laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Hana looked up from her computer. Screener's alarms began sounding throughout the facility. She had been running calculations for months, preparing for exactly this scenario. The mathematical models on her screen showed probability curves that would terrify most people. But Doctor, Hana smiled grimly. Finally, she whispered, uploading her data to secure military networks around the globe. For 20 years, Dr. Hana had been part of a secret international project called Last Resort. While the world's politicians talked about peace and cooperation, a small group of scientists and military strategists had been preparing for the worst-case scenario. They had studied every possible alien invasion strategy, analyzed every weakness in human civilization, and developed countermeasures that violated several international treaties. Her computer chimed as confirmation signals came back from hidden installations across 6 continents. Nuclear silos disguised as research stations, orbital weapons platforms hidden among commercial satellites, and biological warfare laboratories that officially didn't exist were all coming online. They have no idea what they're walking into, she murmured, watching as her colleagues around the world began implementing protocols that would turn Earth itself into the galaxy's most dangerous trap. The aliens approaching Earth expected to find a primitive world populated by a species that would surrender when faced with superior technology. Instead, they were about to encounter a civilization that had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds and had just been given 72 hours to prepare for the fight of their lives. The Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and energy, their massive ships blotting out the stars around Earth. Admiral Kolvan stood on his bridge, expecting to see panic and chaos from the primitive world below. Instead, his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. "Sir, we're reading multiple launch signatures from the planet's surface," his tactical officer reported nervously. "Thousands of small craft are rising to meet us." Kolvan laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Small craft, let them come. Our shields can deflect anything their primitive technology can produce." But as the human ships approached, something felt wrong. These weren't the panicked, disorganized flights of a desperate species. The formations moved with military precision, and their approach vectors suggested tactics that the Admiral had never encountered before. Captain Wu gripped the controls of his fighter, feeling the familiar weight of acceleration pressing him into his seat. Around him, 200 other pilots from 12 different nations flew in perfect formation. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of facing an alien armada. Phoenix Squadron. "This is Phoenix Leader," Wu spoke into his radio, his voice calm despite the impossible odds. "Remember your training. These ships are bigger and stronger than us, but they don't know how we fight." The alien vessels were massive, each one the size of a city floating in space. Their hulls gleamed with unknown metals, and energy weapons flickered along their surfaces like angry fireflies. Any sane military commander would have ordered a retreat. But humans had never been accused of being entirely sane. "All units, this is command," came the voice of General Park from the Seoul bunker. "Weapons free. Show them what Earth hospitality looks like." What happened next would be recorded in Imperial military history as the single most shocking moment of first contact in galactic records. The human fighters didn't try to match the aliens' advanced energy weapons. Instead, they did something completely unexpected. They started using nuclear weapons like bullets. "What are they doing?" Kolvan's weapons officer screamed as proximity alarms shrieked across the bridge. "They're firing fusion warheads at point-blank range." The human pilots dove straight into the alien formations, releasing their nuclear payloads at distances that should have killed them along with their targets. But the humans had designed their ships to survive their own weapons, turning suicide missions into surgical strikes. Captain Wu watched his targeting computer lock onto the command tower of an alien dreadnought. "This one's for Earth," he whispered, releasing his payload and pulling his fighter into a turn that pushed his body to the limits of human endurance. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a newborn star, and when the light faded, the alien ship's command section was gone. But Wu wasn't finished. His fighter's secondary weapons bay opened, revealing something that made the aliens' tactical computers crash trying to process it. The humans were using their own destroyed satellites as kinetic weapons. 4. Decades Earth's orbit had been cluttered with dead satellites and space debris. Most civilized species cleaned up their orbital space, but humans had left their junk floating around the planet like a protective shell. now that debris was moving with purpose, accelerated by magnetic launchers hidden on the planet's surface. Impossible, Admiral Kolvan muttered as chunks of metal and composite materials slammed into his ships at incredible velocities. They're using garbage as ammunition. On Earth's surface, General Yon coordinated the ground-based response from a command bunker buried deep inside Mount Pektu. The room around her buzzed with activity as technicians tracked hundreds of targets. Simultaneously, railgun batteries 7 through 15 target the cluster of ships above the Pacific, she ordered calmly. Fire when ready. Hidden throughout Earth's mountain ranges, massive electromagnetic launchers began firing tungsten rods into space. Each rod was no bigger than a telephone pole, but when accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that turned their entire planet into a weapon. "Ma'am, the aliens are trying to communicate," reported Lieutenant Cho from his station. "Put it through," Yon replied. A harsh electronic voice filled the command center. "Primitive species, cease your attacks immediately. Submit to Imperial authority and your deaths will be swift." General Yon picked up the microphone and smiled coldly. "This is General Yon of the Earth Defense Force. Here's our counteroffer. Leave our solar system immediately, or we'll show you why our planet is called a death trap." "You cannot defeat us," the alien voice responded. "We have technology beyond your comprehension." "Maybe," Yon admitted, "but you made one critical mistake. You came to our home." As if to emphasize her point, a coordinated salvo from 12 different orbital defense platforms struck the alien flagship simultaneously. The massive ship's shields flared and failed under the concentrated assault. Admiral Kolvan stared in disbelief as his supposedly superior technology crumbled under human ingenuity. These weren't just primitive weapons. They were weapons designed by a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than our tactical computers can track," his communications officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "They're not fighting to disable us. They're fighting to destroy everything, including themselves if necessary." The Admiral watched as human fighters rammed his vessels when they ran out of ammunition, their pilots somehow surviving ejection sequences that should have been impossible. These humans fought like cornered animals, but with the coordination of a military machine. "They're insane," he whispered, watching another of his cruisers disappear in a ball of nuclear fire, and for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kolvan began to wonder if insanity might be humanity's greatest weapon. Despite losing nearly half his fleet in the orbital battle, Admiral Kolvan refused to admit defeat. His remaining ships had managed to establish several landing zones across Earth's surface, deploying ground forces that represented the finest military technology the Galactic Empire could offer. Surely, he reasoned, superior weapons and armor would guarantee victory on the planet's surface. He couldn't have been more wrong. Commander Yun led the first wave of Imperial troops through what his tactical computer identified as a tropical forest in the Amazon basin. His soldiers wore advanced, environmental suits that should have protected them from any planetary hazards. Their weapons could vaporize steel, their armor could deflect energy blasts, and their sensors could detect movement from kilometers away. None of that prepared them for what they found in the jungle. The humidity hit them first. Despite their environmental controls, the oppressive moisture seemed to seep through their equipment seals. Within hours, several soldiers reported equipment malfunctions as condensation formed inside their helmet displays. "Command, this is Strike Team Alpha," Yun reported through his communicator, wiping moisture from his faceplate. "The atmospheric conditions are more challenging than expected. Our equipment wasn't designed for this level of humidity." But the real nightmare began when they encountered their first human defenders. The jungle around them erupted in gunfire from positions that shouldn't have been possible to occupy. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, moving through the dense vegetation, like ghosts. They wore simple camouflage that somehow rendered them invisible to Imperial sensors, and they carried weapons that looked primitive compared to alien technology. But those primitive weapons were loaded with ammunition that had been specifically designed to penetrate Imperial armor. "Contact left," One of Yun's soldiers screamed before his communication went silent. The trooper had been standing right next to his commander when something struck him from the trees above. Yun spun around to find his soldier on the ground, his advanced armor pierced by what appeared to be a simple metal projectile. The humans had studied captured Imperial equipment and discovered that the alien armor was designed to deflect energy weapons, not kinetic projectiles. So they loaded their bullets with depleted uranium cores that punched through the sophisticated plating like it was paper. Captain Kai emerged from the underbrush like a jungle spirit, his face painted with mud and plant dyes that confused alien. Thermal sensors. He had been born and raised in these forests, and he knew every tree, every stream, every hiding place. The aliens were invaders in his world, and he intended to make them pay for every step they took. "Welcome to the Amazon," he whispered into his radio as his team moved to surround the remaining Imperial troops. "Hope you brought mosquito repellent." The aliens discovered that Earth's insects were more than just annoying. The mosquitoes, flies, and other bugs that the humans barely noticed carried diseases and parasites that alien immune systems couldn't handle. Within days, Imperial troops were falling sick from infections that human children routinely survived, but the Amazon was just one of Earth's deadly environments. In Siberia, Colonel Ahn led an assault force through what should have been a simple advance across frozen tundra. The Imperial planners had studied satellite images and determined that the empty, snow-covered landscape offered no tactical advantages to the defending humans. They forgot that humans had been living in Siberia for thousands of years. "Sir, our weapons are malfunctioning," reported Sergeant Vec, his breath visible even through his environmental suit. "The firing mechanisms are freezing up." Ahn checked his own weapon and cursed. The sophisticated Imperial technology had been designed for use in climate-controlled starships and temperate planets. The extreme cold of a Siberian winter was causing lubricants to thicken and electronic components to fail. Meanwhile, the human defenders moved across the snow with practiced ease, wearing simple cold-weather gear that had been tested by generations of Arctic survival. Their weapons were designed to function in temperatures that would kill most alien species. Lieutenant Yon crouched behind a snowdrift, watching the alien troops struggle through the deep powder. She had grown up in these conditions, learning to hunt and survive in weather that regularly dropped to 40 degrees below zero. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, were as helpless as children in her environment. Team 2, there, bunching up near the frozen lake, she radioed to her squad. "Remember, the ice is only safe near the shoreline." The humans had spent days preparing the battlefield, weakening ice structures and creating hidden traps that would be invisible to alien sensors. When the Imperial troops tried to cross what looked like solid ground, they discovered too late that they were walking on carefully prepared death traps. Dr. Hana worked frantically in her underground laboratory, analyzing samples of alien equipment that had been recovered from the various battlefields. What she discovered made her smile grimly. "They're so clean," she muttered to her research team. "Their technology is designed for sterile environments. They've never had to deal with biological contamination." She held up a piece of alien armor that had been exposed to Earth's atmosphere for just 3 days. The metal was already showing signs of corrosion from bacteria that existed naturally in Earth's air. The sophisticated alien alloys were being literally eaten alive by microorganisms that humans lived with every day. "Release the biosamples," she ordered. "Let's see how their equipment handles a real Earth welcome." Within hours, Imperial forces across the globe began reporting catastrophic equipment failures. Their weapons jammed as bacteria clogged delicate mechanisms. Their communication systems failed as corrosive microorganisms attacked circuit boards. Their vehicles broke down as Earth's aggressive biological environment consumed seals and gaskets. In the African desert, Captain Tay led his forces through a sandstorm that had been raging for 2 days. The Imperial troops, accustomed to the controlled environments of their ships, were completely blind in the swirling dust. Their sensors, designed to work in the vacuum of space, couldn't penetrate the natural interference. But the humans moved through the storm like it was just another day at the office. They used the sand as camouflage, the wind as cover for their movements, and the dust as a weapon that jammed alien equipment and clogged air filters. "They can't see us, they can't hear us, and they can't breathe properly," Tay reported to his command post. "The desert is fighting for us." Commander Yun's final transmission came from deep in the Amazon jungle, his voice distorted by equipment failure and rising panic. "Command, we're not fighting just the humans anymore. The entire planet is trying to kill us. The air is poisoned, the water is contaminated, the ground is unstable, and every living thing on this world is hostile." His signal cut to static as his communication system finally succumbed to the biological warfare that Earth had been waging against the invaders since the moment they landed. The aliens had brought superior technology to conquer a primitive world, but they discovered that technology meant nothing when the entire planet had been turned into a weapon against them. 3 months into what Imperial Command had expected to be a swift conquest, the war had become something entirely different. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day, while their own forces continued to deteriorate under conditions they had never imagined possible. Dr. Zenth stood in the medical bay of the flagship, staring at reports that defied everything he knew about warfare and biology. The casualties weren't just from combat anymore. Imperial troops were dying from diseases that didn't even exist in their databases, succumbing to infections that should have been harmless, and suffering equipment failures that seemed almost deliberate. "Admiral," he said quietly as Kolvan entered the medical facility. "We need to discuss the situation planetside." Kolvan looked around at the rows of sick and injured soldiers. Many were suffering from respiratory problems caused by Earth's aggressive bacterial environment. Others had developed skin conditions from exposure to atmospheric contaminants that their immune systems couldn't process. The advanced medical technology that could heal battlefield wounds was useless against microscopic enemies that their bodies had never learned to fight. "How bad is it, Doctor?" "Worse than our worst-case scenarios," Zenth replied grimly. "But that's not what worries me most. Admiral, the humans are adapting faster than should be possible." On Earth's surface, Lieutenant J held up a weapon that looked like nothing in any military manual. It was clearly built from captured Imperial technology, but it had been modified in ways that made alien engineers weep in frustration. "The humans have been busy," he reported to General So, who was coordinating resistance efforts from a mobile command post hidden in the Korean mountains. "They've taken our plasma rifles and somehow made them better." The weapon in Jay's hands was a perfect example of human ingenuity applied to alien technology. The humans had reverse-engineered the complex energy systems, simplified the firing mechanism, improved the cooling system, and created a hybrid weapon that was both more reliable and more deadly than the original. "How did they manage this so quickly?" General So asked, examining the modified rifle. "They're not trying to understand how it works," Jay explained. "They're just figuring out how to make it work better. It's like they don't care about the science, they only care about results." This approach was driving Imperial engineers to distraction. The humans were treating advanced alien technology like broken appliances, taking them apart and rebuilding them with whatever materials they had available. The results violated every principle of proper engineering, but they worked. Dr. Hana had established a network of underground laboratories across 6 continents, all connected by secure communication, links that the aliens couldn't intercept. Her teams were working around the clock, not just to understand alien technology, but to weaponize it in ways the Empire had never considered. "They're using quantum processors to regulate energy weapons," she explained to her team leaders during a video conference, but they never considered that the same processors could be used to coordinate biological attacks. She pulled up a display showing bacterial cultures that had been enhanced with alien nanotechnology. The microorganisms were designed to target specific materials used in Imperial equipment, eating through metal alloys and composite materials with frightening efficiency. "We're not fighting their technology with our technology," she continued. "We're fighting their technology with our biology." The results were devastating. Imperial troops found their weapons dissolving in their hands as Earth bacteria, enhanced with alien nanotechnology, consumed the sophisticated materials faster than they could be replaced. Communication systems failed as biological agents ate through circuit boards. Vehicles broke down as seals and gaskets were digested by microscopic predators. Captain Wu had been among the first human pilots to fly captured alien fighters, but he was no longer alone in the skies. Hundreds of human pilots now flew hybrid aircraft that combined the best of both technologies. The alien ships provided speed and energy weapons, while human modifications added armor plating, redundant systems, and weapons that no alien designer had ever imagined. "Control, this is Falcon Leader," Wu reported during a patrol mission over the Pacific. "We've got a formation of Imperial fighters approaching from the northwest. They're flying standard attack patterns." "Copy that, Falcon. Leader, show them what we've learned." The ensuing dogfight demonstrated just how much the war had changed. The Imperial pilots were still flying according to their training manuals, using tactics that had worked against other advanced civilizations. But the humans had spent months studying those tactics, and they had developed counters that the aliens couldn't anticipate. Wu's fighter dove toward the ocean surface, pulling the alien pursuers into a high-speed chase just above the waves. The Imperial pilots followed, confident in their superior technology, but as they approached what looked like empty ocean, the water suddenly erupted with defensive fire. The humans had established underwater gun platforms that were invisible to aerial sensors. The aliens flew directly into a crossfire that had been designed specifically to counter their flight patterns and shield configurations. "They're learning our tactics faster than we can develop new ones," one of the surviving Imperial pilots reported back to his carrier. "It's like they can predict our moves before we make them." Colonel Minho was coordinating what the humans called the Trojan Protocol from a command bunker that had been carved directly into solid rock. The strategy was simple but devastating. Let the aliens think they were winning, then reveal that every victory was actually a trap. Phase 3 is now. "Active," she announced to her field commanders. "All units begin the revelation." Across the globe, Imperial forces that thought they had secured territory discovered that the humans had been planning their counterattack from the moment they retreated. Every building the aliens occupied had been rigged with biological weapons. Every water source had been contaminated with organisms that specifically targeted alien physiology. Every piece of equipment they captured had been sabotaged with time-delayed mechanisms. The humans hadn't been losing territory. They had been laying the largest trap in military history. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all our ground installations." Commander Yextar reported to Admiral Kolvan, his voice barely controlled. "The humans have been poisoning everything. Our troops are dying from contaminated food, contaminated water, contaminated air. Every building we occupy is toxic to our biology." Kolvan stared at the tactical display, watching as red markers appeared across the globe, each one representing an Imperial position that was now under biological attack. The humans had turned their own surrendered territory into a weapon. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They've been planning this since the war began," Yextar replied. "Maybe since before the war began." "Sir, they're not fighting to win territory, they're fighting to kill us." The Admiral realized with growing horror that the humans had never intended to fight a conventional war. They had been fighting a war of extinction from the very beginning, using every resource at their disposal to ensure that any alien who set foot on Earth would never leave alive. The death trap that the scouts had warned about wasn't just the planet's harsh environment. It was the species that had learned to thrive in that environment, and who now viewed the entire galaxy as just another hostile territory to be conquered. 8 months after the invasion began, Admiral Kolvan stood alone on his bridge, staring at a tactical display that told a story of complete and utter defeat. Of the 2,000 ships that had entered Earth's solar system with such confidence, fewer than 150 remained operational. The rest were either destroyed, captured, or drifting as lifeless hulks in the cold vacuum of space. But the numbers on his screen told only part of the horror story. "Sir," his communications officer reported, his voice trembling with barely controlled terror, "we're receiving surrender broadcasts from 37 Imperial worlds. The humans they've left their planet." Kolvan felt his blood turn to ice. "What do you mean, left their planet?" "They captured our ships, Admiral. Hundreds of them. They're using our own faster-than-light technology to spread across the galaxy. Every world we've conquered in the past century is reporting human military advisors supporting local rebellions. Admiral's forearms gripped the command console so tightly that the metal began to bend. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be trapped on their death world, fighting a desperate defensive battle. They weren't supposed to turn the tables and launch their own interstellar campaign. On Earth, President Kim stood before a joint session of the United Nations, her words being broadcast simultaneously to human forces scattered across dozens of star systems. Behind her, a massive display showed the expanding sphere of human influence as former imperial colonies declared their independence. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. 8 months ago, the Galactic Empire made a critical error in judgment. They assumed that because we evolved on a dangerous world, we were trapped here by our limitations. They never considered the possibility that we weren't trapped on Earth with our harsh environment. Our harsh environment was trapped here with us. The assembled delegates erupted in applause, but Kim raised her hand for silence. "The Empire brought us the gift of faster-than-light travel. Now we're sharing the gift of human determination with every oppressed species in the galaxy." Captain Wu, now commanding a fleet of hybrid human-alien vessels at the edge of the solar system, intercepted the retreating Imperial forces with a message that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. "Imperial Fleet, this is Captain Wu of the Earth Defense Force," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Your request to leave our solar system has been denied. Any vessel attempting to retreat will be destroyed or captured for the Liberation Fleet." Admiral Colvin couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans weren't content to simply repel the invasion. They were holding his entire fleet hostage. "You cannot stop us from leaving," Colvin replied. "We still outnumber your forces." "Maybe," Wu acknowledged. "But you made one mistake, Admiral. You taught us how your technology works. Now we're better at using it than you are." As if to prove his point, the human fleet opened fire with weapons that the Imperial engineers didn't recognize. The humans had taken captured alien technology and modified it beyond recognition, creating hybrid systems that combined the best of both civilizations while eliminating the weaknesses of each. The battle was over in minutes. The remaining Imperial ships, already damaged and demoralized, found themselves facing enemies who knew their technology better than they did, and who fought with the desperate creativity that only comes from a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. General Yeon was coordinating ground forces across 17 different worlds, teaching formerly enslaved species how to fight using tactics that the Empire had never encountered. Her voice echoed through communication channels that spanned light years as she addressed alien rebels who had never known freedom. "Pain is temporary," she told a group of insectoid fighters on a mining colony in the Vega system. "Oppression is a choice, and freedom is something you have to take for yourself." The aliens were learning that human military doctrine wasn't based on superior technology or overwhelming force. It was based on the simple principle that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to pay a higher price for victory than they were willing to pay for conquest. Dr. Hana, now working from a captured Imperial research vessel, smiled as she reviewed star charts showing the Empire's former territory. Red zones marked systems in active rebellion, while green zones showed worlds that had already declared independence with human support. "Look at all these worlds," she said to her research team. "Billions of beings who spent centuries believing they were too weak to resist the Empire. All they needed was someone to show them that the Empire could bleed." The humans had done more than just defend their world. They had exported their most dangerous weapon to the rest of the galaxy. Not their technology, not their military tactics, but something far more powerful, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. Admiral Colvan sent his final transmission to Imperial High Command, knowing it would probably be his last official act as a military officer. Immediate quarantine of the Sol system. Classification upgrade to Class Thuman extinction threat. The human species represents a clear and present danger to Imperial authority throughout the galaxy. He paused, watching as another of his ships was boarded by human marines who moved with the confidence of apex predators. "Command, the humans aren't just defending their world anymore. They're exporting their death trap to every corner of the galaxy. They've made contact with rebel groups on 43 worlds, and every single one is using human tactics to fight our occupation forces. The response from command was immediate and horrified. Admiral, you are ordered to contain this threat at all costs. It's too late for containment, Colvan replied quietly. The humans have already won, they just haven't finished explaining it to the rest of the galaxy yet. As his transmission ended, Captain Wu's voice came over the Imperial Fleet's emergency channel. This is the Earth Defense Force. Your empire ends today. Any Imperial vessel that wishes to survive will broadcast its surrender on all frequencies and prepare to be boarded. You have 10 minutes to comply. Dr. Hanna looked up from her research as alerts came in from across the galaxy. Human-advised rebellions were succeeding on world after world, using tactics that turned the Empire's own strengths against them. The aliens who had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology were discovering that neither fear nor technology could defeat an enemy that simply refused to stay defeated. They called Earth a death trap, she mused to her team. They were right, but they never understood that we weren't the ones trapped here. We were just waiting for someone to give us a ride to the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had lasted for over 1,000 years, conquering worlds and enslaving species with methodical efficiency. But they had never encountered a species that viewed the entire universe as just another hostile environment to be conquered. The humans had learned to thrive on a world that tried to kill them every single day. Now they were teaching the galaxy that survival wasn't about having the best weapons or the strongest technology. It was about being too stubborn to die and too angry to quit. The death trap called Earth had opened its doors, and humanity had stepped out to meet the universe with the same attitude that had carried them through ice ages, asteroid impacts, and every other catastrophe their brutal world had thrown at them. The Galaxy Wu,